One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the Reason Reborn. I am your co-host, Black Magus, aka Mike, even though it puts my name all over fucking. I always forget to change that shit, and it bothers me. Really does bother me. How it. Let me change it now. All right. Anyway, I'm your host, Black Magus. I'm here with my co-host, CardiacSoul. How are you doing, sir? I didn't call you lovely or sexier like usually. I'm sorry.
It means I'm having an off week. Who knows? I would
just
like to say that my name is somehow miraculously right on the screen, even though I don't remember changing it, but whatever. I'm sure we fixed it some months
I
ago.
feel like I just never changed my default name, and that's the thing. I've been lazy to go in and actually fuck with settings. So,
well, I remember months ago saying like every episode, I'd be like, fuck, how do you change the default name? So that's why I was surprised that mine is right. I guess I figured it out some way along the way. So yeah. I'm proud of myself retroactively.
Yeah, I need to get that taken care of. Anyway, so lots of stupid stuff as usual going on politically and socially. Namely, that abortion shit, that shit done blew the fuck up. Like, really, really blew the fuck up. So this week we've had protests at the houses of the conservative Supreme Court justices, which has enraged many, some within the Republican Party wanting the DOJ to react and set up rules to prevent people from being able to protest. Which, you know, of course they want that. Like, no. It's okay when your people break into the White House, you know, and try to murder staff people, but can't stand out somebody's house and yell at them.
The hypocrisy was definitely not lost on me when I was reading through that. I mean, yeah, it's not even just, you know, you mentioned the January 6th riot. I was actually thinking of Trump's impeachment hearings, multiple. I was like, you guys wouldn't even force rules on, you know, your own boss or whatever. You're just going after these random people. I mean, that's not to say you should differentiate, but that's kind of my point. It's like, you guys are very loose with the rules when you want to be. So it gives you very little credibility to bring it up. That aside, how should I put this? I guess I'll ask you, I'll throw it to you first. What do you think about the fact that people are protesting in their space at all? Are you bothered by that at all? Or?
Well, first, it's funny because you said the first thing you thought about was the impeachment trials. Actually, one person brought up a very good point. It was like, you know, when people go to abortion clinics, there's generally people outside there protesting and harassing them to the point where they've had to create security details to help walk some people in certain areas because the people get so volatile and hostile. Yet no one wants to bring down the hammer on them. You know, so that I thought that was kind of interesting too, an interesting point to make out. As far as them protesting in front of their houses, like, I'm not a fan of that stuff. Like, I know it's not illegal, but me personally, I don't think I'd go to somebody's home and fuck with them like that. That's just me. I think that's taking it like a little bit too much, but at the same time, again, there's nothing against it. And as long as they're not being like hostile, what you gonna do? I do think some of them are a little bit like extra with the Handmaid's Tale shit. Also, I'm like, all right, come on, y'all. The theater. Chill out. But
Well, first of all, it is worth noting that in the case of protesting abortion clinics, there are a few famous murder cases that have happened there too. So it's not like the violence there has gotten more than just theoretical. You know what I mean? So that is a good example. I guess I feel pretty much like you do. I saw that I was like, I don't feel good about, because it's easy to just, I've seen a few people, podcasts and news and stuff, say like, look, the real issue here is that millions of people are about to lose very important rights. And I agree, but like, I do feel like that is a way to kind of sweep under the rug talking about that. It's not more important than the actual rights issue, but I was like, I do feel weird about saying that it's at least socially okay to do that, especially if the person who you are protesting toward is not the only person in that house or that would be affected. You know what I mean?
all right.
Those motherfuckers are old, so I don't know about them, but I can imagine like, some politicians have like young kids and shit that might be, or spouses who are not particularly interested. So those kind of things do tend to worry me because it's not even just the target who is often affected. So I feel a little weird about it. And the thing that I've been trying to kind of wrap my mind around is, well, maybe this isn't fair to say, but like, really, it's the legislators that need to be having this problem. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's not fair, but I'll put it to you this way. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was Chris Hayes, and he had on a guest whose name is escaping me. But he's a big correspondent for Supreme Court issues. And he was making this argument that I fucking despise, but I understood the point he was illustrating, where he was essentially saying, his argument for like expanding the court, both in terms of diversity and size, is effectively the Supreme Court ends up more or less deciding a lot of things about how people live, not just the abortion rights issue, but the travel bans during Trump's reign of terror, what you do and don't get to read, all that shit. Like, things end up at their level very often. And maybe that is because Congress isn't passing enough actual legislation. I don't know. But his point essentially was, if they're going to end up effectively making those kind of decisions, then we need to have more than just a few of them in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I took that argument
too.
Good.
I wanted to ask you this. Do you think the byproduct of them going to their homes has to do with the fact that once the leak was like found out, that they immediately erected like these barriers around the Supreme Court? Because you can't come within, I think, 6 feet of the Supreme Court, or maybe, I'm not sure how far. Now all of a sudden, because they got barriers.
I forgot that happened actually till you just said that, but I suppose, yeah, it could be. I didn't really think about that. That's a good point.
Which again, y'all didn't seem to have worry for the U.S. Capitol until after. So hey, especially when most of y'all knew what was going on. But yeah, I guess that's gonna be the response anytime they know they're about to do something fucked up, is to put up the fences.
So I believe Republicans are calling for the enforcing of some 1940s, 50s law or something that prevents, I guess, protesting toward judges, for the sake of affecting their decisions. And I understand the spirit of that, but I guess it goes back to, the point I was making before, where it's like, they're not just making like a legal decision as such. They're effectively making policy decisions, even though they're not legislators. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to
also
explain this, but there's some weird power dynamic they have that doesn't seem quite right.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, because they're not judges. They're justices. I think there's a distinct difference, considering they're no longer sitting in a courtroom. They're justices. They're you know, arbitrators, for lack of a better term. You know, they're not actually sitting judge. They don't rule on like, you know, court cases in the, you know, sense of how they operate when you're in a court of law. They're basically arbitrating whether or not they feel like this law should stand, that law should stand, this right, you know, has precedent, things like that. They're not, you know, adjudicating as they would have before they became justice. So I think, you know, I don't know if that law would hold. Oddly enough, that would be something you would have to send to the Supreme Court to see if it holds for them too, which is the fucking irony of that bullshit. But I don't think that flies because they're not technically judges anymore.
All right, I guess that's another layer onto it. I do see somebody arguing that, well, part of being a judge is interpreting the law, but I guess it's neither here nor there. Like, I guess what I'm trying to think about and wrap my head around is the fact that, like, you know, to that guy's point, their interpretations of, I said law, I guess interpretations of the Constitution, more specifically, sort of act like policy decisions. You know what I mean? Like there's something about the effect of their decisions that doesn't feel quite right. And I don't know, maybe that's because, maybe I feel that way because, again, maybe Congress isn't making enough actual decisions and leaving it up to Supreme Court interpretation. But yeah, there's something funny about it as far as how I feel toward it.
Yeah, it's weird, and again, it's kind of a testament to their reactionary politics. They don't seem to want anything made a law or policy until it affects them, and then they react. You know, it's just like, it's weird because you would have thought, going back to January 6th, that would have been a reactionary moment when they would have been like, oh no, we have to you have to make sure that these people are held accountable, because you can't just be running up into a place trying to kill elected officials. But again, because they felt like it wasn't them that they were trying to get, and, you know, some of them were helping these people along, they felt no need to react. You know, it's pretty sad. Pretty sad. Also sad is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess another way to kind of express my point is the fact that people are protesting at their place seems to be an acceptance of the fact that they're the ones who are making that decision, not Congress. You know what I mean? I think that's what's kind of rubbing me.
But they are. That's the thing.
Strange.
They are making.
Yeah, they effectively are, and that is not. Go ahead. I'll drop the.
No, it's just I understand, because you would like for them to protest the people where I was transitioning to, voted against codifying Roe versus Wade. There was a vote held, and it lost 51-49. Guess who number 51 was?
That damn Kamala Harris. No, of course, it was Mr. Senator Manchin.
Yes, that bitch there. Who said that he felt like the law went too far. He didn't say how far it went or what he meant by that, because he never says how far. He always says, I just think this goes too far, and then votes against it.
I remember you mentioning this the other day, and I asked that same question because I saw him say that, and I was like, okay, what specifically is in the bill now? Because, like, what is he worried about? I did quickly try to Google it, but I never found quite the answer. Probably there is none, because he's always kind of talking out of his ass, but I don't quite know, like, what the specifics of the law are that would be that offensive to him.
He is such a Republican, and he doesn't want to admit it. I just wish you just switch parties. Like
I mean,
I
he
don't know.
has
I don't
said,
think it would matter in his state because there's plenty of Republican rule in the state of West Virginia. It's not, you know, it's not really a purple state as far as I can tell. So just go ahead and switch allegiances. Like
he's openly said, he's not. What was it? What was the line? If you want a liberal senator, elect one or whatever, he's openly said he's not quote unquote liberal. And I mean, that's true. That's it. I
he's
also
not
don't think
even a
he's
moderate
honest.
though. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
Like you're not even a moderate. You're literally like the extreme opposite of everything that generally is associated with your party. You're literally what is associated with Republicans.
When you say he's a Republican, the way I think of that is he's a Republican in the sense that Republicans in their modern iteration exist mostly to obstruct. I mean, like anything a Democrat wants to do, they're mostly just going to say fuck it for the sake of saying fuck it. And that is how I typically think of Manchin, to be honest. Because often when he objects to something, there's just not good reasoning behind that. He's clearly doing it. Sometimes he's just doing it so that he can appear to be quote unquote moderate, to be the middle ground guy in the room. You know what I mean? He sort of built up this persona for himself. That's not even true.
But he's not. That's the fucked up thing about it. Because it's like you're really, really leaning, to the opposite side. Your whole philosophy and policies isn't being moderate. Moderate is fucking like, what's her name? Gosh, I can't think of her name. She ran for president from Minnesota. But that's somebody I would consider a moderate,
Every time I hear him talk, I feel like he's just trying to scream out loud, look at me, I'm willing to go against my own party because I'm not one of those psycho Democrats.
I also think he's a shakedown artist because I think he's a shakedown artist, and I think very much so what you just said. He's an attention whore because he knows that he has that power, and I feel like he's drunk off that power. And I feel like there needs to be some way to eject this guy. Like, why can't we get him the Madison Cawthorn treatment? Like, come on. So he seems that boring, but he can't be that boring. He has to have some type of skeleton in his closet. Dig that shit out and get rid of it, something, like, because he's useless. He's pretty useless, like, to his own party. Because, like, even the things he obstruct are baffling. You obstruct the, Build Back Better infrastructure bill. Things that will benefit your state, like, tremendously. Like, West Virginia is going to have a problem if and when coal starts to completely be shut out. Because you don't have an industry that can support your state, and you're not allowing them to create something that will help bring better training to your people so they'll be able to work within other industries that are on the rise. Like, you're holding your people back. You're threatening the lives of children, women. All of this, like, for what? Why are you a Democrat?
I think his presence also has created, especially after Biden's election, a false narrative about Democratic power. Where it's like, well, we have 50-50 plus, the tiebreaker in such a case, but that's not true when you have Manchin and, in some regards, Sinema, right? Like, you don't really have that number because, to your point, he's effectively a Republican. He's not going to vote with you. He doesn't vote with you. So, like, you gotta give people a slight bit of positivity when you're like, yeah, we have the numbers to do some shit. It's like, no, you didn't. You're just saying that because you technically have 50 people registered as Democrats, but you don't effectively have that.
All right. And it's pretty sad because nothing can get done because of literally like this one, like again, cinema definitely, but she seems to have some like sense to not want to be that guy all the time. He just wants to be that guy all the time.
I mean, like I said, his persona is built on it. Like I didn't even say built, like it's pretty much the definition of who he presents himself as. And I don't think there's any sip away for him to suddenly not do that. Yeah, but I don't know. Like I said, the protesting feels weird, and it feels like us accepting a certain level of power that's been ceded to the court. I shouldn't say it that way.
Always been kind of problematic. But I guess it was something that we didn't see until like now we got a situation where it's swung in one direction so far and it's not in the good direction to a lot of people, that now it's like, oh shit, why do we have these guys be the law of the land? Like, so it's going to be interesting to see how all this is going to go out, because they just, shot down the bill. Something's going to happen. I know they said they're meeting secretly to discuss the whole situation, the Supreme Court justices. I don't know if there's going to be any change in, in the minds of anybody. Like, I feel like if anything, the loud noise, like, the loud clapback is going to make assholes like, Clarence Thomas be even more resolute in getting this shit done. Yeah. Him and Alito, they're going to double down on that. Kavanaugh and Coney probably will too. Then again, maybe they will back down. I don't know. So we'll see this summer, because sometime this summer we expect this to go down. And that'll start the second storm on this whole crazy thing. Now, there are a bunch of states, and I sent you a list. Effectively, there's at least 16 states that are prepared to go ahead and protect the rights of Roe versus Wade.
The usual suspects.
Yeah, California, Colorado,
cities, yeah.
Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Nevada. Nevada's kind of funny to me. I didn't expect that, but yeah, Nevada. Then again, no, Las Vegas, City of Sin. Yeah. New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington State, and Washington, D.C. So, the six.
I always hate, like, in the article you sent, there's a map that lays it out, not just the list. And I always hate seeing that map, because there's so many different things, in which case you usually see that kind of map breakdown where the coastal cities, the metropolises, obviously they feel different than everything else in the middle. Like, you see that coloration of the map in every political question that's asked, right? It's like, God, the fact that it's this predictable should give some of you guys pause, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that map is like not.
I mean, it was similar to the map for, like, I think at one point, like, COVID distribution, infection rates. Like,
It should be something that makes you think, like, why do people live there or visit there that don't feel like that?
I had that. I wasn't going to say it because I thought it was kind of a douchey thought, but since you already kind of went there with that, I remember looking at that map and thinking, all these places that usually have these opinions are not the places that have, like, money. I'm not saying that, like, the Midwest states should want to be exactly like New York. It's not like those big cities are perfect. For example, cost of living is usually fucking ridiculous in those places. But at the same time, it's like, well, cost of living is kind of high there because that's where people want to live, right? For reasons. Yeah. So
Yeah, like I wish your state wasn't that like expensive. I wouldn't mind living there. Like I feel like that's going to be like the last stronghold anyway. So for some reason, like Gavin Newsom is going to be like the leader of the Free Rebellion or something.
God.
But, yes, depressing stuff. Depressing stuff as usual. Well,
I was reading, what was it? There was something about Alito's little, he went on some kind of diatribe about the reasoning behind this.
you talking about what he was? You talking about the actual discourse or something separate that he said?
He was saying some shit in defense of the draft opinion. What was it?
You really don't have much to fit. Like you invoke the guy who, was a nightmare in even his like time period in the medieval times. I forget what century this guy, but like there's some English guy who did horrible, unspeakable things and horrible, unspeakable thoughts towards women that he had invoked in the whole thing, and it didn't sit well with a lot of people.
I should have taken more notes, but I found one of the lines I was talking about where he says, the inescapable conclusion is that a right to an abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions. Actually, hold on.
Yeah. That's the dumbest thing, and that's the thing that scares the people the most, because again, that's him roundabout saying if it's not in the Constitution, then how is it a right?
Fuck. Let's see. All right, yes, that's because according to Alito, while the due process clause might guarantee some rights that aren't mentioned explicitly in the Constitution, such rights have to be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition. I guess that was the article's interpretation of what he said, but I remember reading that line and I was like, maybe I need to reread that part of the Constitution, but like, why is it the case that such rights must be deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition? First of all, historically, the nation didn't really guarantee that many rights, right? Like that's why we have amendments in the first place. So it's not clear to me that the litmus test for ensuring a right through the due process clause is that it must have been something traditionally, historically upheld. And even if that was true, is 50 years worth not a tradition? Like, what is the time period exactly to make that kind of, I don't know, the logic of that statement was
that's
confusing.
a good question. When does the definition of tradition kick in for him? Yeah, 50 years is a long time. That's a generation, just about.
Yeah.
So a generation.
We talk about a lot of
way. They're used to it.
We talk about upending precedent and whatnot. It's like, well, it's a precedent that's held for like half a century, right? So like, I feel like you're demarcating these time periods in convenient ways because a lot of us weren't even alive during the Roe decision. So
yeah,
I mean, to your point, it's at least been around for a couple generations now. So like, that point didn't make any goddamn sense to me. If you want to try and argue that route, again, maybe I need to look at the specific wording of the due clause, but like, I didn't understand what the fuck he was getting at with that argument.
Yeah, no, it's just like very loose interpretation to try to like skirt around that idea. And if it's allowed, as I said last week, it's going to start a snowball effect on a lot of other things, because then it's just like, Virginia versus Loving, is that considered tradition, or is interracial marriage just null and void now because it doesn't meet whatever standards he has for like being deeply rooted in the nation's tradition? You know what I mean? Like, so
And
many.
when challenged on that, he has tried to make a distinction between the Roe decision versus uh, things like Brown versus Board, Loving, like you said. I guess his distinction was like, well, it's fundamentally different. Actually, there's a quote, wasn't it? Yeah, fundamentally different because, okay, not his quote, but because it destroys fetal life. And it's like, that fundamental difference feels like a bit of opinion, but whatever.
Right. Exactly.
That is rooted in, I guess, the way you define life, not really so much. That doesn't feel like a legal standard to me, but fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really like shallow. It's very shallow, but they can get away with it because they got so many justices that it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. And that's a dangerous thing.
Part of the reason I'm kind of hesitant, you can probably hear that in my voice when I talk about, his arguments. It's like, well, we're taught to believe like, these justices are super wise and they've gone to these elite universities and they have all this experience and like, definitely the Constitution and the law is not my area. I'm a software engineer, so I'm kind of hesitant to be like, this guy's crazy, he's dumb. But like,
No,
when I read
right.
what he says, it doesn't logically make sense to me pretty often.
Like, I wouldn't call him dumb, but I definitely call him crazy. Because, like I said, again, the things that he tries to walk through, it's just like, it's ludicrous. You're pretty much like dancing around the fact that that you have no real like reason other than I don't think it's right.
But yeah, it feels logically lazy, right? I think that's what kind of gets me, because like when he's challenged on, okay, what does this mean for those other decisions? It's like he didn't even think about it, you know what I mean? Like he just kind of suddenly says, oh, it's different, it's not the same, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, that smells of the kind of person who was writing an essay and didn't bother to ask what readers would think of as counter arguments.
Exactly.
Which you should try to predict when you write an essay like that. So
yeah, no, it's a very weird thing that, and it's funny because they used to, at least you thought they would pick people in a more discerning nature, but again, the Trump thing all changed the balance because they just were picking, well, I mean the Trump thing, but just Mitch McConnell's decision not to let Merrick Garland even get a hearing tipped the balance, where they just decided we're just going to fucking rig this shit and just put people who believe in what we think should go, and not necessarily someone who's actually qualified to do the job and to be fair and objective, which is what the Supreme Court, that was the whole idea behind it, was to find 9 people who could fairly and objectively make decisions on different rights and rulings and things like that. But they just went, fuck it. So,
well, I guess it's a testament to the Republican effort to pack the court for decades now. They've been very focused on it. You got to give them that much.
Yeah,
they have stuck to their mission for a long time. They are, if anything, tenacious.
And they're tenacious for the wrong reason, which brings me to the next thing. So, Representative Josh Hawley, I wanted to say Harley, but it's Hawley. Such a weird way to spell that. But Josh Hawley has introduced a bill that will punish Disney. After we've seen Ron DeSantis decide to punish a multi-billion-dollar corporation in his own state that brings a ton of jobs and tourism and effectively is the money pit of Florida, if you think about it. he quote unquote punished them by like revoking their special treatment so that they would have to pay their fair share in taxes. It's like much to the chagrin of no one, because it's like, well, isn't that what we kind of want y'all to do anyway? Like, you're kind of doing a work for us by making a large corporation actually pay the taxes. But, because Disney spoke out against his like abortion laws, his school stuff and all of that, he feels like punishing him. Josh Hawley was to go further by changing the copyright laws so that effectively Disney would lose the rights to Mickey Mouse. Now, a little bit of history, and I won't go too deep in this. Our last two copyright laws have been because of Disney and because of Mickey Mouse, oddly enough. Sometime, oh gosh, I forget exactly when it was. It was the 60s or 70s. The copyright was going to expire on Mickey Mouse. I believe it was 50 years at that point, maybe. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was less than that. It had to have been less than that because, yeah, they were coming to the end, and Disney lobbied to have a new copyright law to be enacted so they could extend it to, I think, 60 years or something like that. Forget the length. They were granted this. Congress basically voted on it and approved it. And so they still kept the rights to Mickey Mouse. And then, I believe sometime in the 90s, this is coming up again. Law expired. Copyright rights laws were extended to 95 years of ownership. And so now Disney's facing, in a couple of years, losing Mickey Mouse. And Josh Hawley wants to roll back. No, they're not using it in 2024. They will lose it in 2024 if he gets what he wants. He wants to roll it back to a shorter term that would effectively make Disney lose the rights to the character Mickey Mouse. And he even said in his write-up that, it's high time that these woke companies need to, basically be taken down a peg. And it's like, bruh, this one thing that they're against, and you guys want to destroy this company for what? I guess they want to make an example out of Disney, because I guess they feel like if they can beat Disney, they can beat anybody. Problem is, they're not beating Disney, because Disney's lawyers have already found loopholes to demolish Ron DeSantis' whole thing with making them pay their fair share in taxes and not having this special state that they have in Florida. So it's not good to fuck with the company that has shown you time and time again that they follow corporate and federal laws very closely. How else would they know to go to the federal government when it's getting close to secure the rights and to lobby it to Congress? You really thought that they wouldn't be able to fucking discern the things you're doing? And do you really think they're not going to be able to bust this as well? Because the one thing that bothered me about this whole thing with Josh Hawley is so what does that mean for all the other companies that have copyrights that are about to expire, that have been long-standing? So you just let everybody take everybody's property and do what the fuck they want with it now? Because you want to punish Disney?
Just a moment ago, I had to say, praised Republicans for if not just tenacity, but I guess the long-term vision they have for fucking the future. But at the same token, they do always seem really lazy about actually planning things. You mentioned the Hawley case going after them. It's like, well, you didn't think Disney had this under control. And it's like, that would require thinking the same way they kept going after the Affordable Care Act. And of course, we realized they don't have any fucking plans, even though they kept saying they want to, repeal and replace. They do seem weirdly uninterested in actually having real plans. There's an aspect of them where they just keep kind of throwing shit at the walls and waiting to see which clump of shit will stick there. Which I guess maybe that experimentalism is its own virtue. I don't know. Shout out to them also for always pretending to be pro-business and pro-free speech and consistently proving they don't give a shit about either.
Yeah.
It's not even just there, right? In education too, we're talking about these book bans now, but even when I was younger, I would notice, the way they always insist about talking about religion in schools and whatnot, dictating what you can discuss in sex ed, shit like that, right? Like, I've said it before, they're really good at acting like they own certain issues and certain standpoints. It's like they don't even believe them at all. And you see that the second something in opposition to them becomes true. They don't care about free speech. They'll silence you from every different angle. They don't care about company independence. They care about making companies profitable, largely because sometimes they have investments in those companies, right? So, or if not direct investments, like owning stock in publicly traded companies, sometimes they are just in their pockets because they make contributions to political campaigns. So they're full. The long-winded way to say they're full of shit. Like they don't actually believe in so many of these values, and it's fucking wild how blatant they are about not giving a shit. That the second Disney's like, well, maybe you shouldn't be a dick about gay. Whoa, fuck you. No more special privileges.
In these books, you shouldn't be doing the gay thing with like you can't say gay in school and all that. Yeah, no.
I love how having a copyright is somehow special treatment. Like if you want to talk about whatever types of tax exemptions or whatever, fine, you can have that discussion. But merely possessing a copyright on IP, in what sense is that a privilege?
Yeah, like gosh, far be it somebody wants to keep their creation. Like I don't think anybody wants to actually keep their creation and keep people from profiting off of it, like and them losing out, That's not a thing.
It's if liberals went after, I don't know, BP or some random company over just that random disdain and said, you know what, fuck you. We're gonna fuck with your copyrights on whatever logos and shit you got. You think Republicans would be sitting there acting like, yeah, fuck companies? No.
Yeah.
Fuck.
He
targeted Disney explicitly by name, right? He didn't just say companies out here should have shorter terms on their copyrights. No.
Yeah.
He was very explicit about fuck Disney.
Yeah, which makes it even worse because it's like, okay, you clearly don't have a problem with copyright laws. You just want to fuck with Disney. Because you probably don't even know what the copyright law is. You just decided, how can we fuck with them? And somebody probably mentioned, they always keep, Mickey Mouse. And he was like, yeah, let's fuck them because that'll kill them. And honestly, if Disney loses Mickey Mouse as their copyright, right? How's it going to kill them? Think about all the things that you see now in Disney parks. All the Marvel shit.
Marvel,
all the
Star Wars
shit. Every other property they ever do, Pixar, shit like that. Disney's fine. Oh, one thing I found hilarious about him too, that he has no idea what the fuck he's talking about is in his whole thing, he made mention how like this company that's in league with China, it's like China don't want their movies, Disney movies in there because they have like same-sex kissing and like things like that. China don't fuck with them like that. China only will take things that they find like socially acceptable for them. And Disney has constantly said, no, we're not changing certain things. And China's told them to go fuck themselves. They're not in league with China. So how you figure they're in league with China?
It's a rational shot at China as though a ton of our companies don't have relationships with them anyway. Like, first of all, they're a huge market. Like, yeah, it's true generally in terms of entertainment. A lot of companies will cater to them on some level, but not even just there. You get a lot of your labor, a lot of your production for all kinds of products in America,
probably
in
tweeting
China.
from an iPhone.
And you motherfuckers were totally okay with outsourcing a lot of labor to China. So what the fuck are you talking about now? Like, this weird inconsistency, like, oh, Disney's a bunch of China lovers. Aren't we kind of all, based on how our economy is set up? And that's not me, not acknowledging certain human rights issue in China right now, or not acknowledging certain economic malpractice, but
yeah,
he's just suddenly aligning Disney with China just to make a random dickish point, and it's like, I don't even know what point you're trying to make. Like, as though America's relationship with China is, it's not like, old wrestling where like the heel was just like some random foreign people we supposedly didn't like. Like, I don't know. I think that it's just so random and fucking dumb.
Very. But again, they don't really have policies. They have angst and they have anger, and they're willing to use it to try to dictate, like, lifestyle behaviors and morals. Outside of it, they got nothing.
Do you watch any South Park or anything?
I haven't watched South Park in a while, but I used to watch.
I don't know if it was like live or if I just had it recorded or something. Like last night, no, it must have been live. They were I guess during like Trump's campaign and presidency, they had Mr. Garrison basically playing the part of Trump, and his whole campaign the entire time was, "We're gonna fuck them to death." Like any group he didn't like, he would just say like, "We're gonna fuck them to death" or whatever. Like, that is, I mean, obviously South Park has always been a piece of social commentary, but that is just kind of the Republican stance. Like,
yeah,
whatever it is we don't like, we're gonna fuck them to death.
Yeah, that's pretty much their motto. They don't really have, like, a policy.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't know exactly what the copyright covers. I don't know if it just covers that character. So, to your point about what they would lose, it's like,
yeah, it would cover that, like any character that you have copyright, anything that you have copyrighted, basically. People, it will become free domain. So anybody.
Well, I mean, like the logo, right? Like the Disney mouse logo. Does that count as part of the Mickey Mouse copyright?
I guess. Mind you, when the last time have you seen the mouse logo used? It's always a castle.
Well,
It's been a castle.
But
I've yeah. It's just like, honestly, when the last time have you heard Disney talk about Mickey Mouse?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, the character isn't really used in anything because they spend all their time either dedicated on Marvel movies or spitting out, maybe not as much recently, but like in the last like 5-6 years or whatever, spitting out live action remakes of their old IP. Lately, they've been doing more newer IP, I guess. Like, they don't use Mickey, Donald, Minnie, Pluto. As much as I love the Goofy movies back in the day, like, they don't do anything with, like, they don't do shit with those originals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the last
maybe if there's some
did, like, even akin to that was when they did the DuckTales reboot. That was the closest that you came to seeing.
I assume there's going to be some kind of Kingdom Hearts game, I think, coming up. So maybe that would be like the biggest. It is Kingdom Hearts.
But again, it's not like they can't use Mickey. It's just that other people will be able to use Mickey.
Yeah.
And they won't be able to, bring the hammer down on someone. So it's not like you rob them of that. You just basically open the gates, which, again, maybe you might be doing some people favors. Maybe there's a struggling artist that could use some Mickey Mouse material and make it big. Like, you might be helping out, like, some liberal-minded person who decides, what if I do a gay Mickey Mouse cartoon for, like, people who are like that, and then it's like, oh, now you're gonna be mad, but it's like, well, Disney's gonna be like, well, I can't stop them. You let this happen.
If you wanted to have like some just general conversation about the length of copyrights, I guess that's an interesting conversation you could have, but that's certainly not the conversation you want.
I mean, personally, I think if you copyright something, it should be yours. If you copyright, because I think if you trademark something, like, unless they change, like, unless you are able to have that changed in some way, like through some type of hearing, I think trademarks probably are. I have to look that up, but I feel like trademarks are kind of permanent. So why not copyright? Like, who the fuck is out here fighting over, like, the rights to make some Mickey Mouse shit? Other than Hustle Man, who's gonna print some, like, bootleg T-shirt to sell on the corner.
To be fair, who has the money to take on Disney in that kind of fight? But
yeah,
wouldn't be worth it to me to try and take them on.
But even if it's not even just that, it's like, really, who is, like, other than maybe your your street merchant who just looking for somebody to make a quick buck, who the fuck is lining up with a, like, array of Mickey Mouse projects right now to unleash on the world, but they just, like, are frustrated because Disney won't let them?
I don't know. I assume most people would want to create their own IP. I'm not against the idea of copyrights expiring at some point. Like, I don't know that I think they should exist for eternity, unless you just want to keep passing ownership of that around forever. But I don't know. That is a separate, less interesting philosophical legal debate, I guess, which again is not the one he's trying to have. He's just trying to fuck Disney because they took a vague, lazy stance toward their quote unquote "don't say gay" bill. Like,
all right,
like they act like Disney just came with the hammer of God and just, like, struck at the heart of the Republican Party. They hadn't really done much of anything that I recall at that point.
Wow.
They just kind of, said whatever their statement was.
We think this is wrong. This rule is wrong. Like,
why do you fucking know? Like,
a lot of people think the ruling is wrong. Like, gee, you should be used to it.
Most of the country thinks that. So.
Right. So it's very.
Like, I've heard this debate about, like, a lot of these companies are becoming more and more liberal and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yes, some of them are more liberal just because of the nature of those companies and where they are, the kind of work they do, whatever. But I think part of the reason you see some of those when you want to poll, certain social political questions among employees and companies is because they are actually the popular political opinion across the board. Like, polls on abortion rights, for example, it's not like, oh, nobody likes fucking abortion except a bunch of liberal hippies. Plenty of people are fine with abortion rights, including on the political right in this country. So, like,
70%.
What the fuck else would you expect? It is the popular opinion. Sorry.
And that's the thing I think that a lot of people don't get, and this will slide us into Musk boy eventually. But it's like this whole idea, like, it's this weird misinterpretation of things like free speech or, the term woke as he used it improperly and things like that. It's like a lot of people are kind of okay with the things that you aren't. That's what happens. Like, time changes, people's opinion changes, the mood of, like, the masses will shift, and the mood of the masses are shifting to, we don't care if people are gay, transgender, whatever. Let those people exist and do their thing. Abortion is up to you. You want to have an abortion, that's fine. It's not my business. I'm cool with that. If you want to do that, I think they don't seem to get that this is most people's attitude. It's not that most people like, because I say this to friends of mine who have issues with certain things all the time. It's like, it's not that I'm fucking out here like, woohoo, I want to see abortions all the time. Like, go ahead and rip them babies out. And like, I'm not celebrating. It's like, I let you have the right to live your life the way you see fit, as long as it's not bringing harm to me or anybody or the masses. If it's not harming them, if it's, and this is your personal decision, who the fuck cares?
Well, in fairness, they would argue that you are harming a person.
Catholic Church doesn't even believe that. Catholic Church doesn't believe, Catholic Church believes that life starts with first breath. So even the religious argument falls flat.
Oh, there's different sects, but I will say this. And it is always kind of weird for me to make this point because, one, I'm an atheist, and two, I am pro-choice. So like, I don't have much of a dog in this fight, but I do feel like over the years, there's two aspects of the abortion argument. There is the question of what constitutes a life, basically what constitutes a life worthy of protection. And there is the women's rights issue. And I feel like over the years, a lot of us, especially on the left, have always just jumped right toward the women's rights issue, which it is a women's rights issue. But I do think we sometimes don't bother to engage anymore with that question of what constitutes a life worthy of protection, right? At least historically, that has always been kind of their point. I don't know if they're really bothering with that shit anymore. Like a lot of people now feels like they're just like, yeah, fuck women's rights. But there are two kind of separate questions encompassed in abortion rights. And I do, as a godless pro-choice liberal, do feel like we tend to ignore that question as if it's not consequential. And I think a lot of those religious people would say that is the point.
Well, no, but see, here's the thing, and I'm glad you brought up religion, because part of the reason why Ron DeSantis is kind of scrambling now, and why people think like, even if the Supreme Court does come down with a decision, that they're going to get, like, they're basically hammered and destroyed by it, is because of religion. Judaism. Jewish people in their code believe that you can have, basically their code says that abortion is okay. There are a bunch of Jewish groups that are getting together with law firms that are starting to write up litigation to go after the Supreme Court decision if they make that, because their stance is, well, in our religion, we're okay with like abortion. So if you're banning abortion, you're effectively being discriminated to my religious rights. And because Judaism is considered by law a religion that falls under that precedent, they can't really ban abortion, because then you're doing the one thing that you've always, again, that has been traditionally rooted in our history, which is religious freedom. And it's in the Constitution, so Alito can't say shit about that. So that's going to be an interesting fight if they do come out and do this shit. Again, like to your point, they don't think about this shit. They just do.
I hadn't seen that. That is certainly an interesting legal move. I feel strange about it because I guess, to your point, it is using the concept of religious freedom to defend it as a right. But it's like, how do I put this? I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking. Like, it doesn't feel like it should be defended that way. Because I would defend it the other way. I would say that you wanting to ban abortions in the first place is or at least for those people who want it based on your religion that you're enforcing on the rest of us. I don't feel the need to
No, but I
protect.
think that it's a clever move because it's throwing your bullshit back in your face. Because
No, like I said, I like the move. I guess
it
maybe
does
because, you know,
feel
as a
sketchy.
non-religious person, it's
No,
like
I
I feel
understand.
like it's suddenly become like a battle between two different religious ideas. And it's like, in my sense, I'm like, I kind of want either you to be making that move, but I do find that move rather interesting from a strategic standpoint. I will say that.
Yeah, I think it's a clever as, and I think it's like effective move because again, you're always screaming about your religious freedom because let's be honest, most people consider themselves of a Christian faith in this country. Or at least that's a predominantly like loud voice in this country when it comes to things like abortion and what have you. So it'll be very interesting to see that dog get its tail pulled violently by another that actually has a more valid point than you do. Like it'll technically make sense. That's what makes it funny because it's like a technically because they're going with the land of the law. Whereas
To your point,
they're going
it's
with
throwing it back in their face. And I was like, it's one, it's amusing, but two, I was like you said, it's clever. But I think the problem with me saying like it's throwing it back in their face is like, well, I didn't agree with them doing it either. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like there's a more generic way to defend it than using the same sword the other assholes are using. But I'm not against them trying that. I am very curious to see if that is, the filthy atheist will have to accept that it was religion that saved the day.
Religion's gonna save your right to get rid of that baby boy.
Which feels
that must hurt. No, seriously.
Yeah, it feels a little obnoxious now, but if that's what it takes, I guess, whatever it takes. Oh God. I'm still like wrapping because I hadn't heard that story. So I'm like wrapping my head around. I'm like, God.
Yeah, I know.
I'm kind of annoyed. I will say though, in terms of the part of Christianity that apparently has an issue with this and the Republican Party writ large, somebody else was making this point. I forgot how they said it, but it was something like, the Democrats often like listen to the people and try to figure out what they want or whatever, whereas the Republicans will try to make you want what they want, through propaganda, through messaging, whatever. Like they don't really give a shit what you want per se. They just got to try to convince you that shit is going on. That's why they're always like on these misinformation campaigns. They're always trying to create outrage for things that nobody would normally give a shit about. And I think abortion is a good example. Like, I don't know the history of this, but it was my understanding after hearing somebody talk about it that like at first the Roe thing wasn't that, it certainly wasn't as charged and controversial until, certain actors started making it a big deal. And then of course, the tribalism kicks in. And I've seen that with other issues where it's like, nobody really gives a shit at first. And then like a bunch of Republicans will start screaming about it. And then some of their constituents will be like, yeah, that is bullshit. What the fuck? Like,
right.
They're very good at inflaming their base towards different social issues. You know what I mean? Things that they otherwise don't give a shit about.
Yeah, it's funny because it goes back to that thing I sent you where a dude was saying he wasn't going to watch some X-Men property because they're going to have a transgender character. And to your point, like you were saying then too, like probably never even knew about the thing or touched it or were going to touch it. So why are you fucking acting like this? It wasn't going to be something that you were interested in or that you, and again, that goes back to my point about how for me, you shouldn't be all caught up, and hostile is something that doesn't affect you or society in a like seriously troubling manner other than your moral proclivities. Like there's a lot of things that motherfuckers do that I find like, probably morally reprehensible. But at the same time, I don't care because that's on them. You do you. That's just not my thing to do. And you're not losing that right to feel that way, like that you don't have to indulge or be a party of something. So I don't know.
To clarify, the reason I bring it up too is because I had said before that, the majority of people when polled are fine with abortion rights, but I think it's also worth noting that Republican Party doesn't really have to give a shit about what people want, which I don't know if that's quite the way I wanted to phrase that, but they're not really beholden to what their constituents want per se. You know what I mean? Like they kind of want their own thing. I shouldn't even say they want their own thing. They rely heavily on outrage now to kind of sure up the passions of their voters. So, but because that is their main means of energy and strategy and power, they kind of have to feed toward things that are controversial. And then they don't really have a choice otherwise, unless they're going to actually try to improve people's lives and do things that they want. But why the fuck would you do that? For example, gun rights, right? Like a lot of people are perfectly fine. I say gun rights, gun regulation. A lot of people are fine with, more regulation on gun in polls, but yet you see Republicans freak out and want to give babies, an assault rifle when they come out of the womb. You know what I mean? Like they have to take the kind of weird stance on every fucking issue that nobody else would give a shit about.
Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, I guess this is like, if you're a company like Disney, don't say anything because they're going to fucking come after you for not going on with their agenda because they're angry.
Like who was talking about the copyrights issue? You know what I mean? Like,
but it all circles back.
Go after fucking
again,
everything.
It's all circled back to their need to want to control and fucking define what other people's lives are. And if you speak out against it, you're enemy number one. You're public enemy number one. So yeah, I know. You always circle back to the other stuff because it's always that stuff for the reason behind their actions, because they don't really have that many tricks. They don't want to feed poor people. They don't want to acknowledge, homosexuals and transgender people. They hate women. They want to control their lives, and they want to keep, minorities as poor and in check as possible. That's pretty much their whole playbook. And if you don't agree with it, they got to knock you down a peg too, because they can't allow you to encourage people not to go along with it.
You hear the term fascist thrown around at them a lot, especially nowadays. But
right.
Like, it's for a reason, It's not just people being too lazy with their words. Like they are very, they have increasingly fascist tendencies. So
yeah,
they should really grapple with that, especially because they keep pretending they're about, the liberal ideal of America's a free place where you can do what you want. Like, well, you guys can bitch all you want about how everything is woke and you can't say the things you want, blah, 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 blah. You have a far heavier hand on what people can say and do than most liberal people are interested in doing. So,
right.
Best.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of idiots, Elon Musk has put his purchase of Twitter on hold. Dun, dun, dun. Ladies and gentlemen, your freedoms aren't coming back. You're not going to get that free speech anytime soon that he promised you. So what you going to do now? This man's an idiot. Because we didn't really talk about it last time, or at least I didn't bring it up, but I've, sort of followed this whole situation and have been finding it super amusing because there have been rumbles that this sale probably won't go through, mainly because he doesn't have the money, really. A lot of financial experts have suggested that the price in which he offered to buy back was a ridiculous amount, and that they think that he could have got it for a lot cheaper than he was offering. By doing so, he has now had to sell some of his stake in his own company, Tesla, to try to show up the cash, because lo and behold, this richest one of the richest people in the world doesn't necessarily have the liquid assets to make such a purchase. I think he's only got like maybe 10 billion or something, like, personally, and then the company's worth a lot, but it's not liquid, which is why he just had to sell stocks. And it's looking more and more like he's just having trouble getting his hands on the funding to actually make this purchase. So he's been throwing out things like, there's something with the whole, I guess it's the algorithm or whatever research they use to, like, determine how bots affect Twitter. He doesn't believe in the findings, so they need to figure that out, because apparently one of his stipulations was like they have to, like, start getting rid of bots, because he's really against bots, because he feels like bots control the narrative, which oddly enough they do in some cases, just not the way that he sees it. But and so now he's not going to be buying it anytime soon. Maybe, I don't know, may not be buying it at all. Are you upset, sir, that you now can't run rampant and do what the fuck you want, and Trump won't be back anytime soon?
I don't know what the like I said, law is not my area of expertise, but I guess no, it probably wouldn't count as a monopoly because they're not in the same business sector. But I do think there is something to be said for a motherfucker being able to just buy it. Like, no one man should have all that power. I don't know. Like, I feel like I don't know the legal avenue to talk about that, but I feel like that needs to be a discussion point. The guy's able to just grab up whole things like that feels strange to me. So I was already uncomfortable with, even if I liked it, even if it was fucking Obama, I'd still be like, I don't know about that. I think I said it last time. Like, look, if you're gonna say like, "Ooh, this is the public square," you should be afraid of somebody with the power to just grab the whole public square. So no, I'm not bothered by him not having his hand on it. Two, I agree that we should try to regulate the bot accounts, the spam accounts. They are dangerous and they can have, serious impact. But I was never sure how much that was happening, one, and two, I don't think that's really I think, their claim was like, oh, it looks like it accounts for like less than 5% of activity during this year or whatever. Even if it's more, like, I don't think the bot thing is the biggest problem of social media in general, because I see what being on social media does to people that I know. You know what I mean? Like, I see the way their mind works when they're on social media, how quickly, and I've expressed this with you too. Like, sometimes I'll like send you an article and then I have to like backtrack and be like, all right, my bad, I got caught up by the headline, a deliberately misleading headline or headline written deliberately to piss me off. Kind of got me before I read the article, my bad. And all of us kind of do that. So like I'm more concerned about what social media does to people than like what the bots are doing, So I don't know what his big fixation on the bot thing was. I don't know why that should affect his decision to buy it. That sounds like bullshit, one, and two, again. To me, it feels like not understanding the problems with social media anyway. I don't know what to say about it. I guess him, even if the bot thing is genuinely a reason for him to buy or not buy, that feels like a bit of a savior complex, you know? Like at this point, it feels like this isn't just a business decision for Musk. How do you say this man's name? Why am I?
Elon Musk.
It is Musk. Why did Musk sound weird in my mouth just now?
His name is weird.
Sometimes you get like a word and you try to say it and it's like, that feels wrong, but I guess that is technically how you say it. Okay.
Because it's not commonly used and it's not a flattering word in its definition.
True. I did kind of feel like I was insulting him when I said it just now. But
no, he's an aroma.
The way he has talked about trying to acquire Twitter has, again, it's bugged me because of the ego aspect of it. It's like, yeah, you know, Twitter is this thing and I'm the motherfucker who's going to come and save the social square and make it about free speech and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, have some goddamn humility, you goddamn maniac.
Well, again, like I told you, he's the man with like small dick energy. He fights so hard to try to be popular and cool. He doesn't like, he's a square. That's the easiest way to say it. He's a fucking square. Like,
even to this point, because he's been pretty active on social media about this proposed acquisition, and it's like, we still don't know what the fuck you want to do. You know, like, you're making such a big deal about this and how you're going to fix it and blah, blah, blah. We still don't know what you want, really, which is part of why the bot thing is kind of confusing. It's like, oh, what? If there aren't enough bots that need fixing, you're not going to bother anymore? Really? Is that... I'm kind of attributing a reason to him because he didn't give us one, you know, but like, he just feels so disingenuous and full of shit and immature about what is actually a pretty consequential, you know, business undertaking and social undertaking. So,
yeah,
fuck,
like I
put it to you this, like, I never had any feelings toward Elon one way or the other. Like, you know, some people kind of hate the guy. Some people worship the ground he walks on because he's associated with SpaceX and Tesla. And, oh, he's real life Tony Stark. He's a futurist. He's blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right, whatever.
It's not,
I guess.
No.
I mean, even if whether he is or he isn't, doesn't really matter to me.
No, but I get offended when people keep talking about the genius of Elon Musk. Seriously, he's a rich kid who inherited money from his racist daddy, who owned like slave mines for mining emeralds in South Africa, who bought a company, legally bullied the people who originally started to agree to put his name on it as a founder. A lot of people don't know that, but he's not an actual founder. He was just legally made a founder through litigation after he bought it, after it had been a company for years. So he didn't find Tesla, for all of you guys who think that he's the founder and creator of Tesla. No. And
even if he had been, what would that really mean? You know, like, that doesn't make him an engineer or something,
right,
that like
exactly
developing cars.
Right. You know, he has not, anything he's done, he's not come up with the idea. You talk about SpaceX, like the guy who owns Virgin has been like making space flight for years. He again took another idea of somebody else and decided to throw his money into the loop. It's just that this time he didn't buy that company because probably and I can't remember the guy's name, but he probably told him go fuck himself because he's just as rich as he is. And then he decided, well, I'm going to do my own thing because I think it's cool, and I'm going to try to outcool his cool. You know, so he's a fucking loser. He tries to buy his way into everything, and it's in the hearts and minds of people.
To be clear, I'm not saying you need to be an engineer to be smart, by the way. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to keep saying that he's a genius, as people seem to take for granted, I need some explanation for what you mean.
Right.
Because just being able to buy a company does not make one a genius.
Yeah.
And you know, there are companies that failed that, you know, it's not necessarily the fault of the leadership. Sometimes the flow of business just works like that. You know, public interest in a product or service may just go away. So it's not that cut and dry that merely because he happened to buy a business and they happen to still be afloat or something means he's inherently
that were already blowing up and he puts his name on it. That's all.
Like I said, I didn't have any negative feelings toward him, but like I said the same thing about Alito when I was reading his thing. It's like, well, I'm not in his field or whatever, so I feel strange, but his arguments don't make sense to me in this case. I read some of what Musk says about social media. I'm like, what? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I think I sent you some tweet or something you said the other day about like hardcore engineering or some shit like that. And I was like, I'm literally a software engineer. I'm at one of the top companies too. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like I can guess, I guess I can, I can take a stab. I think I generally know what he meant, but it seemed like a dumb throwaway statement, really. Like we're just gonna engineer the shit out of it. It's like that feels like something somebody who's not an actual engineer would say. You know, like if you had a website, I don't know, you're just like, maybe it wasn't performing that way. It's like, we're just going to get the programmers to make it fucking great. It's going to run super fast. But you know, it's sort of this vague, like, make it do attitude that like somebody who doesn't actually know what it would take would say to me. That is how I interpreted him.
No, like seriously, if he's going to make a valid point, make a point like I'm about to make now. I just DM'd you a tweet. And this is one thing I need for Twitter to get its act together before like anything goes down with them. Y'all need to stop with these fucking suggestions that y'all be putting on people's timelines now randomly all of a sudden. I liked it better when all I got on my timeline was the people that I followed or whatever they retweeted and things like or liked and shit like that. I don't need you to just be random throwing up shit saying like you might like this, like the shit that I just seen you. I'm not even gonna say what it is on fucking like camera because I don't want to give it the attention that it like, you know, already is getting even more attention than what it's already getting because it's pissed me off. Fix shit like that. The randomness of the like fucking timeline now is just out of hand. It be putting bullshit. I don't want to see no bullshit. Stop it. Stop it. What benefit was that tweet to me?
I mentioned, you know, bots aside, the way people get enraged on social media being, not just get enraged, but the way social media can increase outrage being one of the problems. I think that right there is indicative of another problem, which is that the incentive structure of a lot of, not even just social media, but like a lot of internet sites now is how much of your attention they can keep. So I think they're more inclined toward just putting, again, I'm not going to say what it is either, but like I do see things like this too. And there are things that I'm not interested in, but there are things that are goofy enough that I will interact with them in the sense that like maybe I'll send them to you or, you know, comment or retweet like, what the fuck? Or, you know, like they're not interested in giving me things that will like amuse me or better my quality of life, increase my knowledge. They just kind of want my attention, and that affects the quality of what they show me. You know what I mean? I think that is its own issue.
Yeah.
Like for example, I don't even watch them, but I don't know if you see this too. Like you go on YouTube, sometimes you're just kind of scrolling through, and no matter like what kind of shit you watch, those videos of like these, I don't know, track stars, pole vaulters or whatever, you know, those kind of female athletes always show up and it's always like a thumbnail of their ass or something. Like without fail, those will like show up. If I were to just go to YouTube right now, I probably wouldn't have to scroll that far to find them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even watch those things. Most of what I watch on YouTube are like anime things or random comic things or just tutorials and shit. But I feel like YouTube is showing them to me because well, they're hot, so I'll interact with them, which means I'll stay on the site longer, which feels like a toxic thing to be doing.
I mean, yeah, I don't know who's like controlling their algorithm machines or whatever, but they be doing on some bullshit. That's what you need.
They have the wrong intentions when doing it up with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that needs to be fixed. But of course, he ain't gonna fix shit because he may not even get the company. So oopsie.
All this chatter, and we still don't know what the fuck he wants. And somebody, one of those articles pointed that out too, where it's like, this isn't normally how a motherfucker would do business, where they're just tweeting all this shit. They don't even like have everything
but
finished and settled yet.
Like it shows you the quote unquote genius of him and why like people need to stop thinking that he is. Again, he's a guy who has money and the ability to buy shit. He don't know how to run any of that shit. He leaves it to people who knows how to do it, and he just sits there and he's the face. That's it. That's all. That is all. Man's not smart. Man had no need to be smart. He's been rich all his life.
Oh God.
Oh yeah. All right. So anything interesting that you want to steer the people towards before we go?
Honestly, I haven't been like consuming too much media. I've been as I've mentioned, I'm an engineer, but I've been trying to like step into the art realm a little bit. So when I do get some free time,
Yes,
I'm typically
that's what we need to steer them to. You need to go to twitch.tv/CardiacSoul. This my man has been streaming now. And he will stream some of the art stuff if you're interested in seeing that. And he does a variety of different games, a wide range of pretty interesting games at that. Some hilarious. A game last night that was pretty interesting. What was the name of it?
The Artful Escape.
Yeah. I joke, but I wasn't joking when I said it was somebody's like late 90s, early 2000s Adult Swim dream, because that was the type of stuff that, I used to watch on Adult Swim when I used to watch it heavily back then. So it wasn't a diss. It was kind of more of a compliment because it had that aesthetic to it.
I do like a variety of games. I do think somewhere in the description on that Twitch page, it does says like, it's a phrase variety streamer or something. So you would see a lot of weird things from me. As for the art thing, yes, you probably will see more of that from me. I'm still trying to figure out a setup for how to, I've only done it once so far. And I was like, I didn't like the quality of how this was. So I need to work on that. But yes, I said that to say that, like, normally I would give like a book recommendation or something, but like I'm more trying to develop a new skill than like, I guess if you want to develop that skill along with me, what's this guy's name? There's a YouTube channel. His shit is called Blender Guru. I think his name is like Andy Price or something like that. Andrew Price. I've gone through a couple of his tutorials for using Blender to create 3D models. Learned a lot from them as somebody with little experience. They're funny. They're informative. It's fun. I don't know. For those of you who like to learn new things, I think it's a fun thing to do. And Blender's free anyway, so I would direct people to his shit.
Nice. Well, there you go. Yes. I need to get back into trying to make emotes and things like that. But yeah, so check out Cardiac. I think you will enjoy that. Fry your brain watching Twitch instead of doing something else. I think that's it for this show. So
next week, Elon Musk is going to be like, "Oh, Twitter, I meant to buy Twitch."
I would love to see that fight, like over Jeff Bezos, like dead hands. Like right. That'll be
It'll be more fun.
That'll be the battle of the Sith. I'd love to see that. Elon Musk will probably lose because Bezos looks like he would like have a bunch of disciples that will just come out and just fucking destroy him for him.
Oh, I will say, guys should check out Moon Knight. I think it's just 6 episodes, but it was very interesting, different kind of show. And Kenobi should be coming up, which isn't my first interest, but I have been getting more into the Star Wars shit as they've been releasing new
2
content.
weeks
So
from now, Kenobi.
So for those interested in,
We
talked about Disney. So
Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader. It should be interesting to see.
Yeah. We mentioned Disney, so we should at least give a shout out to the shit they're putting.
Yeah,
out.
let's like promote Disney stuff. Like they need us to.
Yeah.
In response,
I'm on the payroll. That's why I was shitting on the Republicans and defending Disney, because I'm on the payroll.
I wish I was on Disney's payroll. Like, hey, you need a PR person, something like that. I am your man. I will be an advocate of the House of the Mouse, and promote your shows. I mean, hey, we already watch your stuff. You might as well pay us to be ambassadors. Why not?
Yeah, so I'll suggest Moon Knight to the people. Obviously, Kenobi hasn't come out yet, so I can't recommend it yet, but I am going to watch it.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. And they just started production on Ahsoka.
Yeah. Which, if I can suggest any Star Wars thing to you guys, I swear to God, please watch. I know it's kind of long, but it gets better throughout. Watch the Clone Wars animated series. I know people don't respect animated work as much, but it's so fucking good.
Yeah, just support Disney. Support Disney. Fuck Josh Hawley. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you again for watching, listening. We will be back next time, hopefully with less Elon Musk and abortion talk, and have something else even more depressing to talk about that doesn't revolve around those two subjects. Or maybe we'll have something cheerful to talk about for a change. That would be nice. Like, ain't gonna happen in this political state, but it would be nice. Anyway,
it'll probably be Ukraine. Moving on.
Oh no! Oh God, this world sucks. Anyway, we'll see you next time on the Reason Reborn, everybody. Peace.